Welcome to another episode of One Patriots Place Live with Classy Claire Cooper and Thomas Murphy, all brought to you by E2G and the E2G Sports Network. Thank you for listening. Please do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And today we welcome in our guest. Men want to be him and women want to be with him. It is the voice himself, Mr. Bob Sosi. Bob, welcome back to the show. Apologise for the absence of Steve, but how are things with you?
Things are great, Claire. I didn't realize that you were a creative fiction writer. But I appreciate the introduction anyway.
Technically, I am trying to be a fiction writer, but no, it's true. Everybody loves you, Bob. Everybody loves you.
Well, I'll remember that the next time I check my notifications on social media.
I'm more than happy to talk to you off air and record that for you for any anything necessary, any intros required. I have had requests, so I'm more than happy to do that for you.
I appreciate it very much.
Strategically, I had not told Bob that Steve has stepped back from his responsibilities here at E2G Sports to handle things at home, and Claire is convinced that I did that so he would still show up, and Bob has confirmed that yes, that Claire is the reason that he is here today.
I love it. Thanks for putting that on tape there, folks.
Okay, there you go. That will be Claire's new ringtone for when I call. Bob, I got to ask right off the bat, how did you feel about the ending of the AFC title game?
Well, the best part about the AFC Championship weekend and NFC Championship weekend for me was what took place out in Las Vegas, but I'm sure we're going to get to that momentarily. My rooting interest was with the team that lost the game in Kansas City. As far as the end, I'm guessing you're referring to the sequence of Mahomes escaping the pocket, the late hit out of bounds, and the kick by Butker to win it for Kansas City.
Right.
I was pulling for Cincinnati just because they're broadcaster. More than anything else, Dan Hort is a very close friend of mine. And, of course, there is this rivalry between the Patriots and the Chiefs. It's for selfish interests, of course. The Pats, were the team that dominated the AFC for so long, and now the Chiefs have become that team going back to the Super Bowl for the third time in the last 4 years. All that being said, I thought the late hit was the correct call.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, it was an aberration or an anomaly compared to the way the game was officiated overall. I think both games were poorly officiated, poorly managed by the crews on the field. The first game was so lopsided, and the circumstances with Brock Purdy getting hurt early, certainly took away from the attention I think that would have been paid to some of the way the game was administered by John Hussey and his crew. And then in the second game, of course, all kinds of problems. And, you look at the replays, and it's easy to do this in slow motion to break it down, but you could even see it live on the punt return by Sky Moore. Zach Taylor loses his mind on the sideline. There's not only one, but I think arguably two blocks in the back on that key punt return that amounts to a 20-plus yard difference. And then, of course, there's Mahomes escaping the pocket. And moments earlier, I had seen Ted Karras called for a hold deep in Cincinnati territory to back up the Bengals. And Mahomes escapes with what appeared to be multiple holds. And all that being said, Murph, I will say this when questionable calls go against the Patriots in close games, it never comes down to one call or a couple of calls. Maybe in a certain situation, obviously the hit by Osei, but he played such a terrific game.
He did.
And I think about all the mistakes before that by the Bengals on offense, the failure to protect Joe Burrow, some of the missed tackles uncharacteristic of the Bengals defense during that game, including one by Pratt, one-on-one with a running back. And he was the guy, of course, who was vocal in the tunnel going back to the locker room for the Bengals and later apologized for it, for being a bad teammate in his own words. So that's the way I look at it. I think the league does have an officiating problem. It was consistent with what took place all season long. I'm not sure how to solve it. I do think one big step would be to have a sky judge, someone who could help officiate from on high to
Mhm.
assist the crew down on the field. I don't think adding another official or making officials full-time, all of them, is going to solve the problem of keeping up with the game and trying to identify all the
Yep.
fractions that are out there that need to be called, given the size and the speed, the physicality of the play.
Yeah, myself, I was just I was rooting for the Bengals because I like when Trags is happy. Our old buddy Mike
That's
Petraglia
right. Absolutely.
is
Another
a
reason to root
huge
for the Bengals.
Cincinnati guy, and but my take is, you know, when I said this yesterday on a couple of shows that I was on, is if you don't want to come down to a bad call, don't leave it in the hands of the officials. Make your plays earlier in the game, and then the officials aren't taking. But do you think for just a continuity sake that maybe who they're sending to these games, who are officiating these games, they should keep crews together?
I do, Murph. I think you should grade the officials as a crew,
Right.
rather than having these quote unquote all-star crews.
Hmm.
And I'm not honestly, John Hussey in his management of games over the course of the last several years, I often find that his games are filled with delays, conferences.
Yep.
Just anecdotally, from my recollection,
That whole
Ron,
5 down thing was killing me.
and I think that in Ron Torbert's case, from my recollection, he's been a real solid official
Hmm.
for the Patriots games and in general. I remember he officiated, I believe, a playoff game between the Pats and Tennessee a number of years ago. Really, the first time he had a high-profile assignment in the postseason. But I do think it is an issue in terms, especially when you're talking about those delays and
Right.
officials being on the same page. They approach their mission every week during the regular season in a similar way to the teams, just not devoting as much time, but nonetheless, they meet, they discuss how they're
Hmm.
going to call the game, they go over what went well the last game, what did not. There is a process, and we've seen it sometimes in the hotel if the Patriots are staying in the same hotel as the officiating crew. I can remember one instance, for example, when Gene Steratore and his crew were sitting around a big table at breakfast in the hotel restaurant and having this extensive conversation. And essentially, it seemed like they were covering the bases for what they expected coming up to officiate that game. I think it was between the Patriots and the Cincinnati Bengals, if not mistaken, in Cincinnati, of course. And I want to say this too. Given what I've said about the team that I was rooting for, and considering what we're talking about with the officiating, Patrick Mahomes was sensational in
Right.
terms of the effort he gave. Having watched him the previous week, I didn't think there was any chance he could do some of the things he did against Cincinnati's defense in that game. And for him to escape in that situation, whether there were holds in front of him or not, really a marvelous, marvelous performance by him.
Always the
If we're
class act.
sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If we're going to stay on the topic of the weekend games just for a moment before we
Please.
kind of go into the Patriots, I want to sort of talk to you about the previous game. I know obviously that the Bengals game was sort of a little bit more interesting. I don't know. I mean, the 49ers were on their fourth quarterback, which just seems so strange nowadays. What is your kind of viewpoint in regards to Purdy? A lot of people have sort of said, I think before he actually came out of how significant his injury was, there was a lot of criticism that he wasn't going back in the game fully, that kind of thing. And I know a lot of that has been debunked now because of the severity of his injury. Plenty of talking about, this opens the door for Tom Brady to go to the 49ers, that kind of thing. I feel like it's one game. This kid played so well. And I'd just really love to get your opinion on this, Bob. What do you think in regards to Purdy? And what do you think that the 49ers sort of should do when we get to the next season?
Well, Claire, before we started the podcast, after I dropped my daughter off at school, I stopped at a nearby supermarket and walked into the Shaw's in Sharon, just outside of Foxborough. And this was, by the way, while Murph was tweeting at me, wondering where I was, why I wasn't home responding to his messages. And as soon as I walked in, I heard a conversation between two of the workers in the produce section. I mean, everything happens in the produce section.
You're right.
And one of them was trying to convince the other that Tom Brady's going to San Francisco. And I smiled, and I'm not sure if he knew who I was, or who I am, I should say. But he came back, he circled back, and he said essentially the same thing to me. And, so they need him now. Purdy's not going to be back, for X amount of games next year because of the torn UCL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with regard to him, I didn't see enough of him, during the course of that outstanding stretch of games. I do think the one thing that stood out to me, though, in all the games that I did see, including in the playoffs, boy, they got a very good offensive line.
Yeah,
of course, when they have offensive linemen block outstanding pass rushers rather than assigning a tight end or a back to them, because Hassan Reddick caused all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, you've got terrific skill position players at wide receiver, and I include Kittle in that, and he's a true tight end too.
Oh yeah,
he's a guy that does everything from that position, but he's a skilled receiver and runner after the catch. I look at the running backs, and Christian McCaffrey is certainly in an elite class. I think along with a healthy Saquon Barkley, those two guys were a lot of fun to watch this year when they were going well for San Francisco and the Giants for me. And then people talk about the Kyle Shanahan system, the Mike Shanahan system, and how favorable it is for quarterbacks. And we've seen it through the years. We have seen quarterbacks leave that system and go elsewhere and make a lot of money. And I'm thinking of Brock Osweiler as an example, and then, fall flat. And that's putting it mildly in his case. So for me, I think the jury is still out on Brock Purdy. Right. I think to say he's a Tom Brady-like story, I get it. 7th round pick, last player taken in the draft, goes into the playoffs unbeaten, one game away from leading his team, or at least, riding with his team to the Super Bowl. But I didn't see enough of him to really know whether he could play. But I also would say, I wouldn't say discount him either. I think that, he deserves a real strong look as the Niners starter in the future. And I would certainly say if you're looking at him and Jimmy Garoppolo at this point, and now all things are not equal because Purdy is going to be unavailable for a long while after he undergoes surgery. But I would say I'd go with Purdy. 1, he's cheaper. 2, he's younger. And, yes, he's hurt right now, but Jimmy has the injury history. And then you have to factor in, what do they do with Trey Lance? Because they gave so much to acquire the rights to draft him. And I can't see the Niners turning their backs and walking away from him.
Not from the number 2 pick in the draft. You just
can't. Can I add a 3?
Please.
Sorry. 1, he's cheaper. 2, he's younger. 3, he's cuter.
And only Claire could add that. Only Claire on this panel, anyway, could add that.
Well, I'm sure Brock Purdy gets what we all would love to as we get older. He gets carded probably if he goes into an establishment where they're serving, because he does look young. That's for sure. I will say, I'll tell you this. I was not one who advocated for Bailey Zappi ever taking over for Mac Jones in the season when Mac was healthy and able to return to the lineup. But I do think when you see the success that a guy like Purdy has, it demonstrates to me how, a quarterback who takes care of the ball, a quarterback who makes good decisions, a quarterback who's, put in a situation where things are right around him, you can have some success. Now, can you rise to that transcendent level and make the kind of plays that Mahomes and Burrow and, make on a regular basis? I don't think so, but I think you can be a very competitive team. And it just made me rethink a little bit about Bailey Zappi. I don't know, we're going to probably get to Mac and the Patriots as well. I wanted to add one other thing, too, as I go on about the championship weekend. I think, once again, it demonstrates seeing the success of the Eagles and the Niners, for that matter, to get to that point, but also Chris Jones. Everything, off the line of scrimmage, and I will include the receivers in that. That's what generally attracts our attention, catches our eye. Yeah. But it begins and ends up front.
It does.
We have a defensive line that can wreck an offense the way the Eagles have. And you got a guy like Chris Jones who can wreak havoc the way Kansas City does. it's kind of like the old Mike Tyson line about having a good plan. Everybody's got a great plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Right. That's it. And it brings it. I hate to keep
Do you
talking.
really?
Yeah, I do. I hate to
Do
keep
you?
talking about. We're a Patriots show, and we haven't talked about the Patriots yet. But Bob, do you think that they should bring back the old rule, the emergency player rule? Remember a few years ago that the NFL had an emergency player rule, and it was reserved for a fourth quarterback. Really, that's what everybody did, and then they just expanded the roster, and that fourth quarter just kind of disappeared. It didn't happen. We ended up with an extra holder or something that just had to happen. An extra special teams player made the roster that could help as a linebacker or a safety or something else. Do you think that emergency players should be brought back?
Murph, I don't think it's going to have any difference. I saw a quarterback, and it might have been Matt Castler. Somebody tweeted that out.
Oh,
okay. There was a response to him that I think coaches are going to carry 3 active quarterbacks, 2 active quarterbacks, or they're not.
Okay.
Now, maybe if you designate it as the 47th player.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Not another expansion, but that 47th player, the way they did with the 46th.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a possibility that of it returning someday. I just don't see it. I think that, to me, I always see the value in having, you've got 46 roster positions on game day that are active, right? I just kind of feel like the temptation for a lot of coaches, I guess maybe if it's quarterback only, yeah, I suppose it's not something that I gave a lot of thought to. I feel like the coaches have that option going in, whether they want to activate a third quarterback or not, and they make you make a calculation, you make a decision, based on the factors at hand. Like San Francisco reached out and got Josh Johnson. I think how many teams has he played for?
Right.
In the course of his career, it's like 13, 14 teams at least. And I think about
that's a career, people. That's a career.
Who's the 5th quarterback that they're going to sign and get ready to be the emergency guy? Maybe we could do in the NFL the way or what the NHL does. Maybe in every city you could have like the designated emergency
Zamboni driver,
as opposed to the emergency goaltender. And if that happens, for example, in Foxborough, you could call down from the radio booth the old quarterback who led the Patriots in the playoffs some years ago, or maybe somebody else is ready.
Are you hinting at Zolak here?
Yeah.
Are you hinting at Zolak here?
Yeah. And you can't touch that guy. He gets to wear the red jersey in the game.
That's it. He gets to wear the red jersey in the game. I'm all for that. I'm all for Scott coming down and leaving you to fly solo just in case. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
I'm just because I haven't seen him play, so it was before my time. So
you
I'm
weren't
like, oh
born.
yeah, okay.
Claire wasn't born. It's tough working with a teenager. It really is. I'm old and I lost my question. Go ahead, Claire.
I just want to say what were you mentioning about that, about like the extra quarterback and stuff like that. The thing is, but how sexy would it have been if Kyle Juszczyk would have gone in at quarterback and they'd have actually succeeded? Oh, I think that would have just been a tingling moment if the fullback had got it.
All about the fullback. I know. I get
there
it.
You go. Yeah, so far
I don't know how far down the tight end was on that one. That would have been a thing.
So far today, we've introduced the man who women want to be with. Okay, we've had the cutest quarterback, and now wouldn't it be sexy? Okay, only on One Patriots Place do you get stuff like this. I'm glad Steve isn't here. I'm glad Steve isn't here because he would be just cringing. Oh,
well, it's really a lot better to listen to than me talking myself into a corner on the emergency quarterback situation, because I realized in mid-answer that I changed my mind. I kind of think if you make it a quarterback position, I don't think teams will go for it. I just think, the economics of it, and also just the Darth number of quarterbacks that are out there, and the time you'd have to allocate to have that quarterback ready.
I got you.
A lot of teams are already carrying 3 quarterbacks on their rosters. And the Patriots were the rare exception in 2000 when they carried 4.
Yeah, and Bob's sitting there thinking in the back of my head, I hurried out of the Shaws for this. All right, let's get to some Patriots stuff. How happy are you to see Bill O'Brien on a football field again, representing the Patriots, my friend?
You know, Murph, we started talking about championship weekend, and to me, it was a wonderful weekend for the Patriots. I know a lot of people around here are not happy about the two teams going to the Super Bowl, one representing Philadelphia, the other being, you know, a longtime rival now in the
Whoever
AFC.
loses, I'll be happy. Put it that way.
But to me, it was a wonderful weekend for the Patriots, because what I saw coming out of Las Vegas was Bill Belichick individually working with college prospects, and many of them, if not all of them, that I saw on defense. And Bill O'Brien out there explaining things to the quarterbacks, including Dorian Thompson, the kid from UCLA. And I just thought it was wonderful to read streams of tweets from the reporters out there in Las Vegas and see the photos of Patriots coaches coaching, and to read about prospects, and to think about how Zay Flowers potentially could fit in, and how the Patriots coaches who are coaching him are working him out as a punt returner, for example, or other prospects that are out there. It's about looking ahead in football. And I know it sounds corny, but to me, it's such a welcome change after, you know, so many months, and rightfully so. You're talking about what went wrong from the start last year, and even as we've learned more about that situation in the last week, and I think there's been a lot of really solid reporting. That we've been able.
Hats off to Callahan and to my favorite human being, Karen Garrigan. That was a fantastic piece.
You know, you could see the work, and I thought the writing along with the reporting in that piece were outstanding. But to me, it was a welcome change, and I think a necessary one at this point.
It was really a turning of the page.
Absolutely, I kept thinking about that. A turning of the page would be the phrase that comes to mind, or onto.
We're on to
2023.
There you go. We're on to 2023. Oh man, if you want to, but no, it was brilliant, and you know, another tip of the cap to Alex Barth and Evan Lazar for what they're doing out there. It's just fantastic. I mean, I love the fact that people tell me that I'm a genius, and it's just like, no, my friends are just smarter than your friends. My friends are just smarter than. Let my children, let me finish. Okay. And it's just that my friends, like Bob Sosi, are smarter than your friends. And I get to talk to them all the time, and they let me know what's actually going on. And they make me sound smart. And it's just like when I tweet one of their articles out and I say, sound smart at parties, read this. And it's really great, the work that the guys have been doing out there. It's really fantastic. We are spoiled here in New England, folks. We really are, because there's just a plethora of a cornucopia of fantastic writers and reporters that get to cover these teams, and you know, hats off to the people that hire them and keep them going, because yes, they, of course, it's got to make fiscal responsibility, but you know, just trickling down to us, it just makes the rest of us so much better fans and better employees of whoever we're working for also, because you know, we don't all get to be there in the room, and these guys bring us in the room and they give us some really fantastic stuff. And yes, Claire, I may come off a little smug and a little intelligent sometimes, but it's only because I have guys like Bob and you, and of course you, darling, in my corner.
Hey, but can I just add quickly? I'm so glad you mentioned Alex's name, because Alex Barth works for 98.5, the Sports Hub. He's a terrific young man. I don't really call him a kid. He's grown up in my time,
and we've watched him.
But he does a tremendous job for our station. And I wonder why Patriots fans, if they're not following him, aren't following him. So, you know,
please,
rather than follow me strictly for Patriots news, you should be following Alex Barth. He's working his tail off out there.
He really is.
On our station more and more, and it's all well deserved.
And there's nobody that appreciates the support out there more than Alex. If you ask him a question, he will always get right back to you as soon as he can and give you some fantastic knowledge. That's why we love having him on here.
I was
Go
going to say,
ahead, Claire.
if you listen to this show, then you'll be following Alex because he's been on this show multiple times. He's a great guy. So yeah, I don't think we have to worry about any of our listeners. They all.
Our Mount Rushmore is just an ever non-ending. Yeah, it really is. It's huge. It's not 4 or 5 people here. Everybody that we bring on is really somebody special, and that we enjoy sharing it with you. How important is this week to Troy Brown?
You know, that's a really good question, Murph, because, you know, and I've heard other people say this on the air, and you know, one of them is someone who works for our station that I don't think people generally look at and listen to let's say softballs or praise for the Patriots, or, you know, someone who's going to shine the light on the positive. It's generally heat to intensify any negative storyline out there. But I heard Michael Felger say this. Forgive me for mentioning the name, Patriots diehards. No, but I heard him say that he said, Troy Brown. I love Troy Brown, to paraphrase. I loved him as a player. I mean, I love everything about him. Having covered him, etc. But then commented on the wide receivers last year. Look, there were times, and I don't think this only falls on Troy, and maybe it necessarily doesn't fall on Troy. But I think questions were raised during the course of the season in terms of coaching that particular position. But I think it's overall, in terms of the route running, receivers rounding routes as opposed to the sharp cuts, running 8 yards instead of 10 yards to get to the first down marker, or whatever the specific situation might have been. And I think it's fair to wonder, about the situation. But at the same time, you look at the work of Marcus Jones as a punt returner. And even, I know he struggled early in the season when he was out there, but Miles Bryant, to ask that kid to go into the NFL, the first few weeks of the NFL and even in the preseason and training camp and try to return punts, having not done it, Troy Brown's work in that area can't be overstated. And I think it's just in general, having him around, as far as how important this is for him, I think it's probably just a tremendously important experience for him personally, professionally, to grow. And as he talked about at the podium, being designated as the head coach, he's learned a lot about a head coach's responsibility. I just think the most important thing for Troy Brown now is having Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien to be the guy that demands perfection on rep after rep after rep. And I'm, and it's going to sound unfair I'm not trying to say that Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, for example, in their roles when they were on the offensive staff, didn't want to see that. I don't know that. We're not really in the meeting rooms and so forth with them. I'm sure Matt, though, had a lot to deal with offensively, trying to learn the offense and try to coach in an unfamiliar situation, as opposed to when he was at home on the defensive side. And his last year, for example, as the Patriots assistant coach, as defensive coordinator in the organization, as opposed to his first year trying to call plays and coach offense too. So I think just having somebody like Bill O'Brien to be the overseer of all that, and who knows, maybe he's going to bring in some people, but I think Troy Brown has a place and will continue to have an important role. And I think this week, to answer your question, is a very important one for him. I don't know if specifically he's going to be continuing as the wide receivers coach, but I also don't know that that's going to change. I do think that if he is back in that role, I think you'll see a difference in the way the Patriots receivers run their routes and, their spacing and so forth. And that's going to come down from the offensive coordinator, the person who oversees the offense.
Great.
Well, you mentioned before, I mean, not to sort of backtrack, but just a little bit in regards to Bill Belichick being at the Shrine Bowl and stuff like that, and him seeing him being so hands-on with the defense. I mean, how significant do you think it is that we're seeing this still? Kind of, we're being shown this, that this is still going on, considering sort of the rumors in regards to how much longer Bill Belichick's going to coach and that kind of thing. Do you think it is a really big significant that we're seeing what we're seeing coming out of that?
Well, I think, Claire, I think the thing for me is, when you go to training camp practices and you watch Bill, and those are the practices we get to see the full practice. During the regular season, you have only an opportunity to watch the players stretch and warm up. Maybe the first few minutes of a practice you might be privy to, but that's rare. And I think when you watch Bill in a typical year, including 2021, only a year ago, you will see him move all around all the practice fields. And, in one period, he's going to be working with punt protection. In the next period, he's going to pull a defensive back aside. It could be an undrafted free agent, and he's going to give him an instruction or two about technique. Maybe he's going to walk over and look at, the offensive line drill and add a comment or two to help an offensive lineman or the group. This year, we saw him almost exclusively, not exclusively, but almost, with the offense. I just think what we're seeing out there is so positive to see him back doing what I think he loves to do most, from observation, and as well just inferring from some of the things he has said through the years. He loves teaching, and he loves teaching football. And I think that's encouraging. Now, I think that the defense certainly was well coached last year, even with Bill heavily involved on the offensive side. When you look at the Patriots defense statistically, and stylistically too, I think they had good schemes overall. They certainly had their issues with the elite players in this league, quarterbacks and wide receivers in particular. But I think they were coached well. So I'm not saying that Bill's going to go rescue the defensive staff by any means. I'm not suggesting that. I just think it's good to see him out there again, getting his hands, dirty, if you will. Right. Working on a swim move or some kind of a pass rushing maneuver and providing some kind of a pointer or two for a young player coming out of the college level. That's where he's most comfortable. I think that's where he's, at his best on the field, going all around and being a football coach. I don't know how much longer he's going to coach. I think the passion and the drive is still there for him. Although I think, he's 71 years old. And this past year, he took on a lot more responsibility with the offense, reportedly, and then just what we saw with our own eyes than in the past. This is also, as Robert Kraft has said, a results-oriented business. So that decision is not going to be, Bill Belichick's alone to make. I think that it's the right decision for him to continue as the head coach and have an opportunity to get this team back where everybody wants to see it be. Yep. And I think, again, having Bill O'Brien coordinate the offense and having Bill being back to that teacher in all phases of the game is really the best thing for the Patriots going forward into 2023.
Do you think that's more significant then? Sorry, Murph. Do you believe that maybe that's more significant then? Because obviously Belichick is getting older. I mean, I can't believe that he's 71. If somebody told me he was 61, I'd believe them in a heartbeat kind of thing. Do you think that maybe the situation with them bringing in possibly so much more staff now in regards to Bill O'Brien and trying to fill the holes that probably should have been filled anyway, do you think that kind of thing takes the weight off some of the weight off his shoulders in regards to sort of the assistant coach announcement, that kind of thing, to help extend the time that he would stay as head coach?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, Claire. Whether it has an impact on how long he coaches or not. I think it's
still a great question.
I think it will have an impact on how well the Patriots are coached next year. Let me put it that way, because I think that Bill hasn't forgotten football. No. And the other thing too is, I think I know 71. Like when I was 21, 71 felt ancient.
Yep.
Now that I'm a lot older than 21. I'm realizing, and especially today,
31. Now you're 31.
Yeah, that's right. The 31, or maybe 41, or maybe a little bit older than that. Look, I think the expression "age is a number," and I get it. That's not always the case, and we would all love to be able to live that philosophy, that cliche. But I do think that Bill coaching in his early 70s. It's not the same that when even Marv Levy was coaching in his early 70s, because people today work longer.
Yep.
People, Bill, from what I understand, takes care of himself, right? I mean, he's a guy who works out. He's on the treadmill with his highlighters and going over his notes and his Polaroids, and he's watching game film. You still hear that about him and so forth. So I don't know whether the difference will be him not having to spend as much time on offense. I think he was probably investing the time on offense that he in the past invested in all the phases,
right?
As the head coach, who probably had his fingers on the defense a little bit and his fingerprints on special teams and so forth, and maybe occasionally had input. I just think, what I understand and what's been reported, what I understand of the situation when Josh McDaniels ran the offense. Yeah, I've got to think that when Bill O'Brien is running the offense, Bill O'Brien's going to run the offense.
That's it.
I think it was more about the transition, that they're smoothing out the transition so that with announcing an assistant head coach, that kind of thing, it gives that sort of chance for Bill slowly. It was just what your opinion was of him slowly kind of being able to relinquish his responsibilities a little bit as he gets older. He can still be he can still be doing what he loves, kind of thing, but he's got that sort of just the little bit of a padding to sort of make it not quite so intense for him.
Perhaps I think it has more to do just personally with keeping Gerard Mayo on the Patriots staff.
That's it.
Maybe Gerard Mayo is in the pipeline. Gerard Mayo is one guy that, frankly, and I have said this privately, that, to me, like, he would be near the top of the list of potential successors for Bill Belichick. Yeah. That doesn't mean the job is his.
No.
That there's a guarantee made or that he should have it, but I think he should be, at the top of the list or among the top few candidates to be the successor based on what I have seen and what I have learned and just what I know of Gerard as a person and a coach and a player. I think the naming an assistant head coach was about Gerard Mayo more than it was about Bill Belichick. And I also, for them to announce that they were going to conduct interviews for an offensive coordinator, to me, it was like that to me, and again, I don't know. I'm not privy to what was discussed before the statement was released, regarding the negotiations with Gerard and the process to interview an offensive coordinator. But to me, and I'm teaching a sports public relations class this semester at Emerson College, that's great fan relations to me, because that sent a message from the organization. We're not satisfied. And as well, I think the letter to season ticket members. Look, we're going to evaluate everything. And, the Patriots have not made these kind of announcements in the past.
Right.
It's a different situation. Almost, the old line, we feel your pain. And I think, to me, that said, as a football fan of the New England Patriots, they're on it. They get it. They understand my frustration. They feel my frustration with last season, the failure to win a playoff game these last 4 years, and they're going to make changes.
Very un-Red Sox way of going about this offseason.
Murph, absolutely, and it's easy for me to sit where I sit and criticize the Red Sox, but I think you're talking about acknowledging what we all see, what we all know, what we all hear, what we all read, and saying we're gonna get out in front of it. We're gonna make sure that we don't go through this again. And in the other case, not really facing it, not really, to me,
just tone deaf.
Absolutely. Not. I hate to use the phrase "pull the wool over someone's eyes."
Yeah. Don't tell me I'm smart. I know that I'm smart. Okay.
And people in this marketplace, as sports fans.
Yeah. Claire doesn't know that's the statement that Chaim Bloom came out with at the Red Sox winter weekend, and he's telling everybody in the audience, well, you're smart, you know what I'm talking about here, trying to what Bob just said, pull the wool over their eyes as we watch this this team get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and go away from what made it so successful over the last 20 years. But we are not a Red Sox show.
I was going to say we are a Patriots show. I'm going to throw back because we've had a few things come up in the chat, so I was going to throw over to that.
I think one of the things that I feel, look, and I'm not from the area, right? I came here after my career was well underway. I came here because my wife is from the area. I'd always wanted to live in Boston, and I must admit that I said this before, or New York, and Boston's where I came to. It's where my children were born. It's a place I love, but I do recognize that, you know, it is a parochial place, and I think that more than anything else, the sense that I get from people is that, you know, authenticity is valued.
Yep.
And as well that you recognize, you know, what they feel about their teams. We're talking about sports, how important their teams are. That's one of the things that the first time I ever talked to Robert Kraft, he stressed to me how important the Patriots are to people in New England.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a difference that's demonstrated here. And when you look at you know, again, it's easy for me to say this. I am a full-time employee of the station. I do a lot of work for the team. But like Robert Kraft went to games as a longtime season ticket holder.
Yep.
His kids were raised going to Patriots football games, you know, as fans first.
Yep.
And sometimes owners who are fans, you know, metal or cost, you know, they can be problematic, you know, for some organizations. I think here there's, you know, at least in my time especially, but I think going back to when Robert, for example, hired Bill, like, you know, they feel it the way the fans do.
Yep.
I really believe that
they do.
And I think that the perception of the Red Sox, and I don't know that this is fair because I don't know the gentlemen that run the Red Sox, but I think there is a perception that has been in place here, you know, really even in the most successful of times for them, that they don't get it. And I think that's what we're talking about. I think that's why
the carpetbagger mentality. It's a carpetbagger mentality over there.
Well, I'm not going to say that, Murph, but
no, I did, so you don't have to.
But I just think, you know, so Claire, going back to what we're talking about, I think, you know, keeping mail and also understanding. Look, there's got to be change. It wasn't satisfactory. We're not going to settle for that. You know, it wasn't good enough for you. It's not good enough for us, and we're not going to lose more good assistance. We're going to deal with it. And
we're not going to lose more good assistants. I've said it many times over the past 5 years that this team has lost arguably 4 Hall of Fame football players and 7/10 of its coaching staff over the past 5 years. And people don't realize that. And what we went through last year was just a coaching staff that was butter spread over too much bread. And that's the way I like. They're good people that were good at their jobs. They were just asked to do a bit too much. Go ahead, Claire.
Are we going to do the thing where you start doing the food thing again because you're really hungry and start talking about turkey and stuff? Because like I can't do another episode of that, Murph, really. No. Anyway, going back to, we had some comments, Bob, in the whilst we were discussing. I mean, I wanted to put this up because it made me laugh. Lee put, when I was at practice, I saw Bill snap the ball and demonstrate blocking, and he looked pretty good at centre. Sorry, as a centre. He's more spry than I expected, which I like. But then what makes that even better was the follow-up of, let me just find it. Joel's put, Lee, I say put Bill at right tackle. Yes. If we need some successful tackles.
I don't know if he's got the arm length to play right tackle.
Oh,
that's it. We might have to kick him into guard, Lee.
Yeah, you know,
to kick him inside to guard.
I think center for Wesleyan is the right place for Bill.
There you go.
Player. No offense. I mean, he's the best football coach of all time.
On here. We really do. We love the outline.
Wesleyan, right down the street.
Midfield. You know, maybe give him a long stick. He could be a long stick midfielder.
Oh, I like it. Oh, I like that.
But, you know, I that's where I could see Bill, you know, really flourishing.
Talking offensive line, I know obviously we're joking, absolutely. But talking offensive line, I know that the draft is kind of, it's still in the future a bit, so we're only sort of skirting around the edges because there is plenty to discuss between now and then, really. But because we've brought up the offensive line, because it's something that is really close to my heart, because, like, you know, you've got the line and then you've got the Titans. I mean, come on, how can I not? But I mean, do you think that the Patriots should be double dipping at the draft in tackle, or do you believe that there's a veteran or a guy out there that they should really be scooping up to get some strength back into this O-line?
Well, I'm not sure if a guy like McGlinchey, for example, is going to be available in the offseason, because I think, did I read your lips correctly, Murph? Was that the
You did better than me because I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know what he's going on about. So well done for that, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go get a veteran,
Yep.
he'd be a guy to get. I do think left tackle is a prime position for them in the draft, or offensive tackle. I do believe that it's an important position, and when they have drafted high, they've drafted well.
Right.
At the tackle position, you think about Sebastian Vollmer. Again, these are my reference points are people that have been on the Patriots in my time calling the games, or just slightly before that. Matt Light. Logan Mankins, of course, had an outstanding Hall of Fame caliber guard for the Patriots, but it really was a tackle in college, and could have played tackle, frankly, even as a shorter guy for that position in the NFL, as he showed against the Baltimore Ravens in 2013. But and Nate Solder is another example, first round pick and a real good left tackle. I know,
The Giants. You find me another Nate Solder in this year's draft so that I can lust after him, please.
They're there. They're there.
I do. I think so. I think tackle is a position that they need to fortify going into this season, and whether that's with that first pick in the first round, or with a later pick, or a free agent. I think if there's a McGlinchey who wants to come to New England and you decide to pay him. Then I'd still draft the tackle.
Yeah.
Because
do you believe that that's the top need then? If you to rank, as people seem to be doing, would you say that at the moment, as you look at it, tackle is literally the number one need that the Patriots have got?
To me, going into this draft, I think that there are three positions. And I think it's tackle, I think it's cornerback.
Yep.
And I think, by the way, I think the cornerbacks for the Patriots are good. I just think that they need they need a clear number one on the outside.
We have three number twos that you are that at least I am happy with. It's that number one guy that you can leave alone and help out that this team really needs. And I don't think that it's somebody that you can address in free agency because it's just too cost prohibitive. And to find that guy,
they did it with Stephon Gilmore. I think you have to look at who's available. They did it with Revis, obviously on a 1-year deal, discounting, what was in the contract for the eventual second year that never took effect. But I think with Gilmore, Revis, I mean, they traded for Talib.
Right.
I should know the list of soon-to-be free agents at that particular position. But I do think that, that's a position to let's put them at the top of the list for the draft. Tackle, cornerback, and then, I think wide receiver is another position, or tight end, to have somebody in the pipeline. I also think, I just think that when you look at like the top 3 or 4 positions, you go with the best player at those positions or the best pick. Where you are. I wouldn't take, if 2 tackles are off the board in the middle of the first round.
Right.
And again, I'm not invested in the draft run-up, at this point. Then I think but this cornerback is available. And this is the kid that has all the traits and the tools that we want, and he can be a number one. Then that's where I'd go. But I think, I think in that group of positions, I think tackle and cornerback are 1, 2, and then I think wide receiver is a position as well. And having said that, though, I think there has to be there's got to be an improvement in terms of the players that they bring in at that position as well. If you're going to draft a guy, as opposed to if there's an AJ Brown who's out there, you can get via a trade or another wide receiver. I'm not, and before you ask, I would not get DeAndre Hopkins given his age.
Thank you.
The fact that he was suspended for the first 6 games last year, 1 strike away. And also I just have this bad impression that's left with me of him exposing the football. And even though I think the Patriots were going to win that game regardless, nonetheless, really costing his team an opportunity to stay in the game.
He did. And I'm not, I was never a huge fan of bringing him in here with all the talk for all the reasons that you've mentioned and a few more that I won't mention because I'll be a nice person.
Okay, don't mention them. I heard tight end and I sat up for a while.
Bill O'Brien here, most people just all of a sudden when the announcement of O'Brien, reports of O'Brien, they as well abandoned that.
There you go, Bob. Is there anybody at the that you've heard about here at the Shrine Bowl that in practice that has impressed you at the offensive tackle position or the offensive line position in particular?
I again, Murph, I don't know if there any names at that particular position, those positions that stand out to me, in just following the reports that are coming out. I think the Shrine Bowl is a game that generally has kind of the secondary group of the top prospects. You look first at the Senior Bowl, and then the Shrine Bowl is on another level. I think there are some players like the receiver from Boston College that I mentioned earlier, who a lot of people kind of have as a solid pick toward the top couple of rounds, 3 rounds of the draft. So I don't know. And we're talking about first round picks. I don't know who the Shrine Bowl, frankly, is in that category. But I certainly think that, that's a position that the Patriots were going to look to and I think have to me, I think they have to fortify that position. I think that, we're going back to the coaching. They've got to, improve the situation there. I think Billy Yates was in a tough spot last year, trying to take over, coming down from the press box to the sideline, right away during a game, right away in the context of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, considering the reports too, that they've been, interested in second interviews with Adrian Clem and so forth, and some of the other names that have been mentioned in association in reports. As O'Brien takes over as the OC, you'd like to have him exert some influence and have sway over who comes in to coach particular positions. Before we run out of time, I want to talk about I hate when I do that, the Patriots free agents that are coming up. Who do you feel could be brought back? Who should be brought back? And is there anybody on the offensive line that you would bring back? I wouldn't bring back the offensive lineman who played on the 5th-year option, Isaiah Wynn. I think that ship has sailed. Right. Great minds think alike with bad analogies, bad pun, bad cliches. I think that I think John Jones. We talked about the cornerbacks, and I think Jonathan last year more than acquitted himself. But putting him back again, if you find the guy who's your true number one on the outside, then John Jones can shift back inside and be in a role where now his level of play goes up a notch or two because he's back where he's at his best. And I think that's the thing to me about the Patriots and Belichick. There are a lot of different things that I think they have stood out for in my time in the previous decade as well. And one of the phrases that often I would use when people ask me about the success of the Pats, putting players in position to succeed, but also making sure they're not in a position to fail. And not that John Jones failed as the primary, cornerback outside, but I think you put him in position inside, or assign him to the number 2 or 3 receiver as opposed to the number 1, the Justin Jeffersons and the Stephon. Then you're getting a much better player and a much better matchup for your football team. So I think he's a guy. Jacoby is a guy I'd love to see back. I think for a variety of reasons. He's such a productive player. He's a quality person. He's a quality player. I think it's important for the Pats. And while we're talking about the free agent class of 2023, I want to say that with their cap space, I think it's imperative for them as well to lock up for second contracts. The players are going to be free agents next year. That should stick around. Brilliant. In this organization. And by that I mean Kyle Duggar. I think Josh Uche. I think those are guys. I want to see those guys. Brilliant point. Earlier, rather than waiting to the 11th hour. But
you missed a name off. You missed a name off there. The 2023. You missed a name off. What?
Well, I haven't. I kind of got sidetracked. I don't know if who's the name that I missed, Clara?
Hunter Henry.
Oh, is Hunter Henry free agent?
It will be in 2023. Yeah, after next year. Yeah.
I don't see Hunter Henry as a priority sign beyond his current contract. I'm sorry. I think I think Hunter Henry's a solid player, and I got to get more out of him, like they did last year, going into this year. And that's why I said earlier. I think and I saw somebody commented about tight end. I think I think tight end is a position. The reason they had to sign Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith for those contracts is because
I know where you're going.
That was a position that for a long time was really unaddressed in the draft.
Yep.
I mean, there's a significant capital, and to me, I think that that's a position where you look past 2023, 2024.
Yes.
But I don't like when I'm talking about. I think one of the things for the team is I think getting more players back who deserve to be back on second contracts. Because I think that sends a message to the players in the locker room. It rewards players for their development in the program. And I'm not just saying you do that just to do it.
Right.
But we've seen it. I mean, Dietrich Wise is an example. He's really flourished in the last couple of years.
Yep.
Now on this new contract for him. So that's what I'd like to see with the Duggars and the Uches, et cetera. And as far as like the guys I don't know if Jacoby Myers is a guy they have to have back. He's a guy I'd like to see back.
Right.
I think it just depends on what else is
Somebody's going to pay him more than he's going to be able to slot in for here. And
and the situation too is that there's no, and I want him back, and I think that, I'd love to see him back. But if somebody pays an exorbitant amount, I can foresee him, going elsewhere because they're not going to match it.
No,
and they were willing in 2013 before he really flourished, before the 2013 season, and then after he became a star for the team, they let Julian Edelman go out and explore free agency twice. Since I was hired as a Patriots broadcaster, he wound up back with him because at that point, that slot position just didn't garner the kind of money,
not as respected then.
People on the outside, so I don't know what Jacoby Myers' market is, frankly, because he doesn't have those exceptional traits, the speed, the quickness, the ability after the catch. He's just a very productive player with savvy. I think he's got deceiving athleticism in some regard compared to like the other productive receivers when you're talking like top receivers for different teams. But I think that he does play special teams. That's a mark against him in the Patriots book in general. But I do think that the guy that I'd like to see back first and foremost is Jonathan Jones, and then then I think I'd like to see Jacoby. I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up elsewhere.
I agree.
I got you.
Just before we wrap up, go
on. Somebody to keep an eye on who is working out for Bill this week is the Michigan kid Luke Shoemaker. I've really liked watching his tape. And he's somebody that could fit in a later rounds, as we're talking about Bob earlier, talking about addressing the tight end needs, maybe before they hit. Yeah. I really like Luke's game. He hasn't been asked to do a lot at Michigan, but what he's been asked to do, he's done really, really well. And he's a fantastic blocking tight end. And I think he could catch I like his tree, put it that way.
Yeah, and the Harbaugh tight ends did well out of Stanford. They had a nice run going during his time as Stanford's head coach, into the NFL with several tight ends.
See, this is it. We've been asked a question, Hunters will be 23-30, so would you look for a younger tight end, Miss Cooper? Well, yeah, technically, my dream thing is that they draft a tight end. Like what Bob was saying, I've been saying this for weeks now, what Bob was saying and what he started to say in regards to don't let the cupboard get bare before you then have to go out into free agency again and throw a load of money at it. My sort of wish is that they maintain Hunter so that he's the veteran in the building, and then they kind of draft in some young guys so that in a couple of years, in 2-3 years, we've got sort of tight endage going forward kind of thing. That's why I wanted to draft Freemuth, to be honest with you. That was my draft crush. So
I mean, it depends on whether he wants to stick around, what his price is, how he produces this year. But he's not a guy that I look to extend. Until his deal is up.
Yeah.
And to be honest, also I look at some of the other tight ends we have seen just this past year. Sometimes we've been watching, and I think athletically, now I'm not. Kelsey's he's in another category.
Yep.
You know, even like a guy like Hayden Hurst, for example, with Cincinnati.
Yep.
You know, I think Hunter could be a productive player, you know, for the Patriots, like he was when he had the 9 touchdown catches in 2021, especially this year with Bill O'Brien, who, among the many things that O'Brien brings with him, I like his use of 3 tight ends. The last time we saw the Texans, you know, when Houston really started the Patriots spiral in 2019, they used 3 tight ends a lot in that game.
And Kansas City stole that. They didn't
have great tight ends. I mean, even like when Ryan Griffin was playing there,
right?
Not you know, physically, athletically, not a great specimen, but he had productive seasons. For example, with the Houston Texans, decent seasons. So I think that's a position we're gonna see market improvement, I would think, with O'Brien now coordinating the Patriots offense in terms of the utilization. Obviously, you know, huge impact with Gronk and Hernandez here during their time together, the brief time when during Bill's experience previously as a Patriots play caller. But I do think that in Hunter Henry's case, not to go to belabor the point or to spend too much time on him specifically, I just think like your top tight end in this day and age, there's got to be a little bit, there's got to be something special. And I think Johnny Smith has that explosiveness. You see it in practice, you see it periodically. They just there hasn't been that production. They haven't been able to find a way to tap into it.
I think Bill will. I think O'Brien will. I'm looking forward to Bob.
He's the key to unlock it.
Yeah, this has been a fantastic hour. It always flies by when you're here. I mean, I could literally sit here for 3 hours with you. I will follow you down any aisle at any grocery store to talk to you, my friend. It's always brilliant. But we're into overtime now, and I don't want Claire's intro to get cut again. Stop doing that, buddy. Stop doing that. Cut out something stupid that I said. There's plethora of stuff that you could cut out, not Claire. So, you know, thank you very much. Let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and what you've got going on writing over at 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Well, you can cut out all the stupid things that I have said, but thanks for having me, and thanks for the acknowledgement at Bob Socci, BOBSOCCI on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at 98.5 The Sports Hub for 98.5thesportshub.com as well. Doing some writing during the season primarily, but we're going to post something pretty soon that will really be reflective of some of the stuff we discussed in terms of looking ahead, turning the page, if you will. So, guys, thanks so much. Take care.
No,
look forward to the next time.
Just brilliant. A man who is firmly entrenched into our Mount Rushmore that is never ending and never growing. He sits right there in a position of auspiciousness. There you go. I was an English major, if you guys didn't know that.
You're really pulling out the dictionary today, aren't you, Murph? You're really hitting the high notes because Bob's here.
All right, Claire, take us out.
Well, as he said, folks, that is a wrap. That is another episode of One Patriots Place, brought to you by E2Gsports.com and the E2G Sports Network. I have been Claire Cooper. He has been Thomas Murphy, and the fabulous Bob Socci joined us. So don't forget to tune in next time for more crazy fun, and go Pats.